I'm going to discuss how you move from, document-based, evidence-based medicine and clinical best practice. How do you compile them? How do you make them into a useful tool? And eventually, how you get that tool into an IT platform. We're not a vendor of an IT platform. We develop the content, and this content is not launched yet. We've been working on it for 3 years. We've kind of covered 100 conditions. We're yet to formally launch it. So I'm just going to cover some of the tenets of evidence-based medicine. There's a lot of evidence to show that evidence-based medicine works, and there's some very interesting studies. If you make evidence available at the point of care, it will frequently lead to a new therapy or a correction in a previous treatment plan. And that's one of the cornerstones of that's a philosophy we're trying to use in what we're designing. So the criteria for successful evidence-based medicine is very well known. It must be clinically rational, it must be appropriate, and encompass the entire continuum of care, and be usable with actionable and measurable items. So I think the last one is very important, and the success is measured by alignment of treatment with the evidence. There's another point which is not listed here. It must be indigenous. It must be relevant to your environment. Some of the criteria that we use is at least 60% of the evidence that we utilize must be Indian, and it must be post-year 2000. Okay, it cannot be older than that. Otherwise, we don't develop a protocol for that particular condition. If we can't find the evidence, we'll abandon that condition. So this is the development process. It's very labor intensive. There's a lot of publications you have to search. You have to rate the quality of the evidence. You have to ensure that these were solid studies, that they were peer-reviewed, they were large, they were well-managed. Who funded the study is also an issue we look at before we decide that we're going to use this as a source. A lot of the Indian studies, due to the limited number of publications in India, some of them are getting published outside. So we look at very remote, like you'll find some big, large study done in South India. It's getting published in some periodical in the U.S. So we have to search all over. It's a very continuous process. Once we collect the evidence, we literally have a librarian who tags it, stores it. We should be able to go back to it at any time. And so we follow this process, and I'm going to rush through to get to the actual content. So what do we develop? We make a clinical protocol, then a pathway, patient care flow charts, and then plans for integration into HIMSS and EMR. So this is how we look at the process. The flow chart is at the Neanderthal stage, and the IT integration is when we're up and running in the current avatar of human beings. So this is the basic document which we would make for any condition. Every one of you would be very familiar with something like this. The next step we make is the clinical protocols, and they would look something like this. And what's very interesting is the stuff in the orange, where you see the J1, J9. Actually, when you click on these, you get directed to the journal or the publication. So we license all of that content. We keep it on hand in our library. And what we recommend is when you integrate this into an application, a lot of studies prove that providing physicians to the access to the source publications is very, very important. So this is sort of the next product that we make. Anybody can make this. So this is just the structure of it. That takes it from a theoretical point to converting it into a usable document. Would be something like this. This could be day-wise, day 1, day 2, And you would notice over here, certain boxes are in a different shade. This is mandatory. So if you have a clinical quality team, they want to get back into the files and they want to do a clinical review, this is the kind of stuff they would look at first as the mandatory steps done, and then they would look at the rest. That's the sort of document that could be in a patient chart. Now the next thing is, how do you get this into an IT application? Because at that point, you could have that on paper and you would have it in the ward. But if you are a hospital who's more interested in getting it into an electronic format, there are some challenges. One is, you usually have to have some doctors who'll sit with some IT developers. There's no common language between the two. The IT developer is talking, query and SQL and VB, and the doctor is saying, what are you talking about? So you have to manage the common language part. So you have to make it easy to understand and easy to integrate format. Anything with clinical logic, you can go very, very overboard, because everything has a relationship with something else, and you can keep on writing rules for those relationships to the nth level. So you have to know how far do you want to go. You're not really trying to create a decision support system. Your expectations have to be clear. You're just trying to provide a guide. You're trying to provide information at the point of care which can help a doctor make a decision, not push him into making specific decisions. It can't be a black box, so you have to have the evidence available. It's not just some random person saying, do this or don't do this. You have to demonstrate what's the reasoning behind it. And one of the speakers said, knowledge changes so fast, so you have to have the ability to keep on updating this. So how do you take rules, logic, and knowledge into developing an IT application? This is really for the IT companies and developers amongst you. This is the sort of end product which, in our opinion, an IT developer finds very, very useful. It tells them the data field, the data type, whether it's mandatory, the business logic, how do you display it. Once they have something like this in their hand, they don't need to have physicians sitting with them. They can develop an application. You can provide them a testing plan which tests that all the logic is clicking very well. And the end product would be something like this. Again, we don't provide a software. This is just purely for demonstrative purposes. So once a diagnosis is done and you choose a condition, the tests pop up which are relevant to that condition. If you're choosing a specific test, which is not the test you should choose first, to perhaps do another test, you'll get an alert. It should be considered if the ultrasound is negative in the presence of symptoms. And this is the point where you can even provide access to the evidence. So if they click over there, you go to, this is the evidence. You can see what in the bibliography, when was it published. Now you select the test, you move it over there. Further, you go to the investigations. There's validation checks. DLC is a part of CBC, so you don't select it. You only select CBC. So that's at a very simple level. That's how you could integrate evidence-based medicine into a clinical application. It's not very hard. It's just about creating a good structured process. Thank you very much. We're in stall 51.